Order. Do we have any declarations of conflicts? Okay. Okay, thank you.
Do I have to restate it or just remind everyone that I am in conflict?
I think just for the record, you could remind others.
So I'm in conflict because my a family member is primarily involved in the STR business, so I sought out opinion on that, and I was deemed to be in conflict, so I'll excuse myself from the discussion on 6A.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Back. Duly noted. So if I can get an approval of the agenda, approved by Councillor Back. Can we get you, Councillor McCabe, to second that?
Absolutely.
Thank you. And an adoption of the minutes from our previous meeting on March the 6th. Moved by Councillor Back, and again, Councillor McCabe?
Yes, second that.
Thank
Absolutely.
you. Any business arising from those minutes? Okay, seeing none, we can ask Councillor Beck to leave, and we can start in on our discussion item. Yeah, sure. We'll let you know when you can come back. Okay.
Councillor Yankov, I just want to let you know that I will be staying on to this portion of the meeting, but then I'm going to have to sign off as well before the next meeting.
Yep, for sure. No, thank you. Yep, thank you. So thanks, everybody. The item on our agenda today is an update on the short-term rental implementation. And just for the public record, just a tiny bit of background. The council did their work last February where they, based on staff's recommendations, made changes to the zoning and development bylaw that better defined permitted uses of a short-term rental. Those were voted on, and they were then to be put into effect on March 28th, which is tomorrow. So we are here today. There were a number of things that needed to take place between last February and now in order for that to roll out. We had an application form, we needed a licensing bylaw, we needed a licensing fee, we needed changes to the licensing bylaw. We need to hire a bylaw enforcement officer, we need inspections, we need occupancy permits, we need many questions that are still not answered. And along with that, we also need to sort out the summary ticketing offense bylaw. So that being said, there's still a lot of things that need to be done. So I think I will now just turn this over to Mr. Forbes, our manager of Planning and Heritage, to just provide us with a report. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, so all of the things that you alluded to were the bylaw, the zoning bylaw provisions come into force and effect tomorrow that were approved last year as to where short-term rentals can be located. We did bring forward a licensing bylaw for short-term rentals in February, and that is moving through the system to get approved, and that would be the second reading this evening. And you alluded to the the summary proceedings bylaw, which is a corporate bylaw that would include how to deal with short-term rentals as well as all other types of bylaw infractions. So where we are right now, just waiting for the direction of council is to deal with the licensing bylaw that you'll be dealing with this evening, whether you want to give that second reading. In regard to the summary proceedings bylaw, which was sent down to our lawyers to work on, they were both looking at the issue of integrating into the summary proceedings bylaw. And that bylaw deals with all enforcement issues in the city, not only STRs, but we were looking for some direction on STRs specifically in regard to enforcing that aspect of our corporate enforcement bylaw. That isn't in place yet. The city solicitors indicate that it's getting close, that they're going to come forward to council with with that, hopefully in the next couple of weeks. But that isn't completed as of today. Today, and then the other issue is a number of questions come up about the licensing bylaw and whether it is comprehensive as it should be, and we do have the bylaw. We do have a bylaw that's being proposed. Those bylaws can always be improved, but there is the bylaw in place. But there are questions in regard to things like occupancy, other elements about what is our obligation when we issue a permit for a short-term rental. We have done quite a bit of research on that, and we are the way that it is proposed is we're following other jurisdictions generally in regard to how they're dealing with this issue, but every municipality deals with it a little bit differently. So, there are some outstanding issues with the licensing bylaw that if we had some additional time, like with anything, we could certainly improve upon. But again, when you opened up your statements and indicated that there's the two pieces that are still somewhat outstanding are the licensing bylaw and the summaries proceeding bylaw. So one is being proposed. Some questions have come up in regard to is it comprehensive enough? And that's sort of a question of you folks, I guess, in regard to if you're comfortable with the provisions that are in it now, or if you're not comfortable with it. And but if it was your desire to hold off on the licensing bylaw, that doesn't preclude the fact that tomorrow the enforcement and the location component of it comes into place. So we still need to review for the province, who are also issue a license. We need to go through that process to review if everybody's in the right location. It is their principal residence, and a lot of the work in relation to implementing it is still in place. So I just want that to be clear that if we did postpone the licensing bylaw for a time to improve it, the key component of it is coming into force tomorrow. I know I just commented a lot, Madam Chair. Maybe if what I've responded to thus far, if you have any other specific questions, I'll see what I can do to answer them.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Forbes. I think there were probably a few questions, but I didn't hear what is the staff's recommendation for council, because you alluded that it's council's decision, but really we need a staff recommendation on how you want us to proceed with this.
Well, I mean, it's one of the issues for me, at least at this time, is that if we were fully staffed and we had the complement that we need, we're in a much better position to move forward. So that's always been sort of an outstanding issue on this. We could likely move forward on it, but in light of the fact that we are somewhat short-staffed, and there would be opportunities to improve the licensing bylaw. If you wanted to hold off on the licensing bylaw, we can still move forward on the implementation of this, because the key component of it, the land use requirements, come into effect tomorrow.
Councillor Yankoff, can I just make a comment?
Yes, please go ahead, Councillor.
And I'm on the phone, so it's a bit challenging for me to hear everything, but I'm not feeling very confident to more time would make it better. Short-staffed, we know that. We know that you're working hard in the planning department, but this is not something that I think we need to rush through unless we have it, done properly, confidently. I'm concerned when we put rules in place, but we have no real enforcement behind rules. Is it really a rule? We've had many issues where we've come across that. So, Alex, and I know it's hard to say either way, but as someone that does this every day, are you confident that this is the best it can be? I mean, we're impacting many people when we're putting these rules into effect, and we just want to make sure that we're being fair and open and clear when we're doing that. Maybe you could just explain how confident you would be pushing this through right now, or do you feel time would be better?
Madam Chair, time is always more time is always better than less. But the reality is that there's three pieces to this. There's the zoning bylaw provisions, there's the licensing bylaw, and the summaries proceeding bylaw. Council McCabe alluded to enforcement. Well, regardless of what we do with the licensing bylaw, which is the last piece to be implemented, we still need to enforce the zoning bylaw. So those regulations come into place tomorrow, and if we do get complaints in regard to people do not have the they haven't applied to meet our criteria that are in the zoning bylaw for a tourist home, then we will be proceeding to enforce that and to bring them into compliance.
Thank you, Mr. Forbes. I have a question, and so so what you're saying, what you are recommending is that the licensing bylaw be deferred until it can be clear, and so therefore those existing folks in the municipality of Charlottetown that are operating an STR will not be receiving a license from the city of Charlottetown until which date, whatever you have suggested for.
Yeah, we can work on the date, but I guess I need to make it clear that, that there's two parts of we can enforce under the zoning bylaw and we can enforce under the licensing bylaw, but we will be enforcing because the zoning bylaw changes have come into place. You still need to get an approval from the city of Charlottetown to get a provincial license to be properly registered. The licensing bylaw has more detail in it. It's got more direction in regard to your obligation as a property owner if you want to implement an STR. But there will be enforcement clearly on the fact that if you're in the wrong location and you're in a location that it is not your principal residence, you're in an apartment, the city is compelled to enforce their bylaw, the zoning bylaw amendments that were made last year.
Thank you, Alex. I have quite a few more questions, but we have Councillor McAleer here with us today, and as chair of the committee, I certainly open the floor up to you if you have some questions you'd like to ask to either Mr. Forbes or to Robert, who actually wrote the STR report, the original report.
Just at this very moment, Councillor Yanka, I just I'm here to just be clear, I guess, to get up to speed and truly understand just kind of where this is at, and that's kind of my purpose in being here today. I know it's going to be talked about more at council at later this evening, so I'm just here to try and understand. I guess where it currently sits and resides. But having said that, just if I could, Chair the Councillor Yankoff, Alex, you referred to the licensing bylaw could be improved potentially. Are there some obvious things that the people are looking for, or that you see that any examples that you could share with us, or is that kind of fair question, or?
Every question is a fair question.
I might point, that might be a question. I mean, I'm sure Mr. Forbes can answer it quite well, but I do believe that Mr. Zilke wrote the bylaw, so he might be able to speak to it as well. So we could maybe get both of them to speak to it. Mr. Zilke right here, yeah.
Go ahead.
Thank you. That's a very relevant and pertinent question. As the bylaw is written right now, I think the biggest issue is that there's no occupancy requirements or verification that occupancy's been provided to the dwelling unit that will then be used as short-term rental. And as I'm sure everyone here is aware of the tragedy that occurred in Montreal, that resulted, I believe, in 5 confirmed deaths, 2 still missing. That was an example where the building was legally licensed as an STR, so they didn't have an actual license. They faked a license. But there was still outstanding issues from a building code and fire safety perspective, which resulted in that unfortunate catastrophe. As the bylaw is written today, could something similar occur? Yes, it's a very real possibility. Because if you read the finer details of the licensing bylaw, it doesn't actually put the onus on the municipality to confirm that occupancy has been granted, nor as that inspections have been carried out to ensure that basic life safety issues are also confirmed, right? So it puts the onus back on the applicant almost to ensure that they have occupancy, but let's be honest, a lot of people won't know that, right? A lot of people buy a property, they assume that, you know, occupancy was granted, that's why they received it. But in a lot of the instances, especially in the downtown where we have a lot of older buildings that are wood construction, and there's been a lot of illegal activity done without permits, so a lot of construction done without any permits or inspections, that's a very real possibility that could result. So I do want to also make it clear that the original licensing bylaw that I actually sent to senior management, I believe it was January in 2020, so that's a little over 3 years ago, actually was the first draft licensing bylaw, and it actually had occupancy requirements and then also a path that if you couldn't meet the code of that day, that you would at least have to meet basic life safety requirements. And I should also inform you that even the province, when they do inspections, they're at least checking for basic life safety inspection. So they're looking at, you know, fire detectors, smoke detectors, windows egress, right? But the way that the legislation is worded is that they require, or I guess they are under the assumption that if you receive a license from the city of Charlottetown, that premise is safe, right? It's not unreasonable. But as the bylaw is presented, you know, today, all of those occupancy and basic life code safety requirements have been removed. So no, I would say from my professional planning opinion, the licensing bylaw is not ready to be implemented. Because obviously there will be huge liability, not just to the corporation, but then also to the hosts, the operators, and the patrons that reside and use the short-term rental themselves.
Councillor, Deputy Mayor?
Yes, go ahead, Councillor McCabe.
I don't know why there's any need for any more discussion at this point until we are ensured that it's not ready. In my opinion, this is not ready, and I am not confident to push something through until I feel very confident that our I's are dotted and our T's are crossed.
So just for clarification, Councillor McCabe, are you not comfortable with the licensing bylaw going forward right away, or are you not comfortable with the entire rollout to go ahead until these other items are looked at? Just needed some clarification. Thank you.
Sure. Well, I got cut off when, sorry about that. I had to call back in and figure out how to call back in. So I missed a lot of what Alex's responses were, but I caught where he was saying it's a kind of a 3-part, all the cogs have to kind of work together. In my opinion, I don't know why we're even rolling. You can't roll one out unless everything's kind of working collectively for me. I mean, I've been sitting on planning for 5 years and I'm still confused to how this is working. So I don't know how we can expect to roll this out until we're very confident that we understand what we're doing and how they all affect each other and how it's going to work.
Okay. Any other questions?
I know we can't vote today, but
well, his worship has just arrived.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
So go ahead, Mr. Forbes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The issue with occupancy is that we've only implemented occupancy in the city since my time since I've been here, which is not that long, for single-family dwellings. So there's not that many occupancy permits ever been issued because we've only started to issue them. So the problem is that when you go into a building from 1875, it's very tricky when you go in there as to what you're looking for. So if we want to go into those buildings for some life safety components or whatever we want to do, it needs to be clearly articulated, because you can't bring those buildings back up to code. They are a lot of the inner workings of the building is already covered over. So occupancy is a tricky situation dealing with STRs. We do have it in the existing bylaw that you will be audited. So we will go through the building, and if there are any things that are determined while we're going through, obvious, in regard to life safety issues, we would have to deal with that at that time. But the reality is that these things are being, if you're renting your house for 29 days, we're not doing anything, or 30 days, or 31, or 32. I mean, people can rent their houses, and that reality exists. So in order to have things perfect, perfect would be ideal, but there are a lot of different iterations of how this could proceed, and it's really hard to sort this out from the fact of the way that particularly occupancy permits have been only a recent manifestation here in the city for those low-density buildings. But a single detached dwelling tends to be the one with the less rigorous building code requirements on it. Apartment buildings where the fire occurred is a much different situation. It's an apartment building, and they definitely have a higher level of building inspection review.
Madam Chair.
Go ahead, sorry.
Just one second, Your Worship. Councillor McCabe, did you have a follow-up from that?
I did, and I guess it kind of circles right back to your point, Alex. Are you confident, and would it be a recommendation that we're ready to proceed with where things are today?
You go ahead, and then
sure.
And then CAO Mohammed has some comments.
Yeah, no, look, we put a lot of work into this. We've been dealing with, we've been dealing with people who are put these bylaws into place. We've been asking for input from them in regard to how other jurisdictions have pursued this. Not every jurisdiction, there's not one size fits all in regard to how you would implement this. So we've been working to ensure that that if we do implement it, that the pieces are in place to ensure a certain level of oversight. That doesn't preclude the fact that you can't improve that bylaw at any time. So that bylaw can be improved next month, the month after. But there seems to be some concern internally that that we should be able to clarify some of these issues further. I wouldn't necessarily indicate that that when we come back at this that there will be a whole lot of changes, but at least we will have reviewed it further, and if that makes the council more comfortable and the public, that's always a better thing than just moving along and just indicating to implement what we have at this time.
So is that a yes or a no? I'm still not sure the answer.
We set this thing up to implement, and that's where where we are. Again, some concerns have been raised again internally in regard to if we could make it better. I suspect we can make it better, but again, it's better than nothing. If you want to regulate this, having some regulations is better than no regulations. And but at any rate, I mean, it's just the decision of the both council and staff in regard to moving forward. Are we comfortable with the bylaw that we have? We put that together knowing these things. Could it be better? Yes. But it's just a matter of, we were on a timeline to bring this forward. we've met that timeline, and so it's just a matter of these concerns are being raised, and we want to make sure that the council is aware of the concerns as well, and we can pursue whatever direction that you may wish to provide.
Appreciate that. And timeline, and you know what, working short-staffed, I appreciate that. It's unfortunate that you feel the pressure on that timeline, but I'm still hearing you say that it can be improved. So I have concerns, Deputy Mayor, with that. So that'll be the last thing I'll say.
Thank you, Councillor McCabe. I'm going to turn that over to CAO Mohammed for.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and actually through to Councillor McCabe. So just for absolute clarity, what staff is recommending is that the licensing bylaw be deferred, and that recommendation be made to Council tonight. As you can hear around the table here, there's some conflicting views about occupancy and how it's been addressed, and we feel it's very important that that be addressed fully in the licensing bylaw. There's also the point of having to establish fees for the licensing itself and making sure that we have a solid rationale behind it. And we feel that it would be more productive to bring the licensing bylaw and the fees together at the same time for consideration. And then, as already mentioned, hopefully, if budget goes according to the path it's been on so far, that we have a brand new bylaw officer who will be able to enforce these things. So that's the only deferral that we're looking for at this point. Now, to be absolutely clear, the amendment for the short-term rentals to the amendment to the planning and or zoning bylaw, that does come into effect tomorrow, as Mr. Forbes has indicated. We're not recommending any changes to that. There's been a year grace period for operators to understand the changes that are in that zoning bylaw, to understand whether they fit with it or not. And it was made clear that enforcement would begin when the bylaw comes into place. And I want to say with enforcement doesn't necessarily mean knocking on doors and, closing things right away. One of the key aspects of enforcement is actually education and helping people understand whether they meet the zoning bylaw or not. So our plan is to start with education in terms of enforcement and helping people understand whether they meet the bylaw or not. And also a part of the rationale, I should say, on the separate issue of the licensing bylaw, because we felt it wasn't ready to launch yet, it didn't seem fair to have this operating system launch, the licensing system launch without all the full details at the front of the season of where we are right now. It makes more sense to launch that system towards the end of the season. All that said, though, the amendment to the zoning bylaw comes into effect tomorrow. It is expected that people will be aligned with the bylaw and that their short-term rentals meet the requirements of the bylaw. Thank you.
So, Madam Chair, just to clarify, CAO Mohammed, that states very clearly in the final STR report, and I can just show you, this is what we've accumulated since 2019 on this issue. 3 public consultations, public meeting with council or a meeting with council, a meeting with planning board, and as I said, 3 public consultations, 2 of them during COVID-19. COVID-19, where we had to be spread out by 6 feet, had to ensure that there was WebEx coming through, so anyone that was unable to make it could watch it via the internet. And again, we're coming to the 11th hour, and the administration, I'm assuming yourself and...
The system has detected that a few lines are still connected to the conference and will attempt to disconnect them. If you wish to remain in the conference, please press *1. 15.
So, the planning department...
Just 1 second, Your Worship. Councillor McCabe, are you still there? I wonder if she got cut off.
Yeah, well, we have quorum.
No, we don't.
Yeah, there's two of us. Are we
I'm here. I'm trying to do whatever.
Okay, thank you.
Are we passing a resolution? No. Okay, so again, I'm trying to, again, all the work that's been put into this, a lot of effort from individuals, organizations, business owners have given their input to this proposed STR bylaw. And the amendment...
Just a quick point of clarity. There is no such thing as an STR bylaw. It's changes to the zoning and development bylaw that define the permitted uses, and I just think we should really be importantly use the right language.
So the right language is, Madam Chair, going back to the resolution, to adopt the official plan amendment, to amend sections of the official plan by amending section 3.2, sustaining Charlottetown's neighborhoods, and section 4.5, supporting home occupations. And then the bylaw that is in front of us that is going to second reading, and is I think going to be held up, is, here's the bylaw, Madam Chair. It is short-term STR licensing bylaw. So the STR is part of the language that we're discussing on this issue. But the amendment that CAO Mohammed referred to is part of the official plan. And as she said, that doesn't change. That's been amended. That was amended back on January 10th in the first reading. So we've gone through this, and it received second reading, and the first reading, it was unanimously approved. So I'm trying to find out from Robert, yourself, Alex, or CAO Mohammed, if we add a friendly amendment to this, to the STR license and bylaw under section 4 administration on and after March 28th, that we amend that to October 31st. Because this STR licensing is just a tool as part of the implementation of the zoning and development or the official plan amendment. Correct, Robert? That's all it is. Same as the the summary offense ticketing system, or the enhancing our summary offense bylaw. That's just another tool as part of the amendment that was made last year. Correct?
So through the chair to your worship, that's correct. The amendment to the zoning and development bylaw, which I believe the Chair Yankoff is referring to, within the zoning bylaw and also the official plan amendments, because there was two documents that were amended. You have to amend the OP, and then your zoning bylaw has to follow suit with the OP. Yes, it does reference to the licensing requirement, because the licensing bylaw would effectively be the implementation mechanism to bring forward and license STR activity within the city of Charlottetown.
Right.
And that licensing component would work in tandem with the existing provincial component licensing framework.
Right, right. So our records clerk, Tracy McLean, did speak to Municipal Affairs. Municipal Affairs said, because it's between readings, first and second reading, we can add a friendly amendment to section 4 and change it to on and after October 31st, 2023. If we wish to continue on. Again, as I said, CAO Mohammed, we've been working on this, and we've had lots of public input. A lot of research has been done on this issue, and we're at a point, where do we go? Well, if you defer it, what are we deferring it? We're not deferring it because we don't have this in place, i.e. the fees. The fees can follow, and I've been asking, as the chair knows, I've been asking since the last council, where's the summary offense ticketing system? That has to be in place. That was made quite clear at all 3 public consultations, that if you don't have enforcement, forget the bylaw. Just forget it. So if that's the case, Robert, either we go ahead or defer. Starting tomorrow, on March 28th, if I go over, and I think it was your brief that you wrote on the short-term rental process, a short-term rental means the rental of an entire dwelling or a portion of a dwelling unit that serves as the operator's host principal residence for a period of less than 28 28 consecutive days. Again, this is to mitigate any confusion. So tomorrow, if I have 3 units, what happens to me? I have my own principal unit and 2 other units. What happens after tomorrow?
You would be infraction against the zoning development bylaw and the official plan.
And not because of the STR license bylaw. It's not because of that. It's because of the amendments we made last year to the official plan and the zoning development bylaw. Like, as I said, this was done. Like, I've looked over this issue a lot, and doing any comparative analysis, we've done our homework, and you know, by deferring something like the STR license and bylaw doesn't mean that the whole process stops. Correct, Alex, Robert? That's my understanding. And again, we just don't want to fool people by thinking, oh, well, we deferred this. This means I can go in, apply for my license. No, we still have to go by the amendments to the official plan and the zoning development bylaw last year.
I think, Your Worship, that I should offer a point of clarification, though, and this is an important point. Even if the amendments take effect tomorrow, like you're stating that it would, and in fact it would indeed, even if we offer like a letter, confirmation letter that, you know, it's your principal resident and the dwelling unit that you want to STR is compliant with the bylaw, we're still in a situation where the province, right, before they issue their license, they want confirmation from the municipality. They want confirmation from the municipality to ensure that the unit that they're also licensed is safe, right? So when the province is issuing their short-term rental license, right, and there's an existing municipality that has a building code bylaw, that has a zoning development bylaw, they expect that that municipality is ensuring that the premise that that municipality is licensing is safe and has occupancy. Currently, there is no process in place to ensure that.
And the issue that we have to keep in mind, Madam Chair, is Montreal just last week, where an Airbnb went afire, and I think it's now up to eight persons or 8 people have died. The city of Montreal is not, they don't have an STR regulation or regulation framework, so it's a provincial issue. Do they?
Actually, they do.
Okay.
Montreal also requires an occupancy permit prior to licensing a dwelling unit for a short-term rental.
Yeah.
That's right on their website. So, in fact, during this investigation, they found that the premise that unfortunately caught fire and resulted in that tragic loss of life was not licensed. In fact, it was in a restricted area of Old Montreal that does not permit short-term rental licensing in the first place. But there were outstanding fire code and building violations tagged to that property that Montreal didn't know about.
Yeah. So I'm assuming this was a bootleg STR, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So the licensing process allows us to check off the boxes, right? Health and safety, fire prevention bylaw, life safety code, correct? That's what we're trying to do, ensure safety, the safety and the health and healthy conditions for anyone who rents, and that the fire prevention bylaw and the life safety code are part of the inspection services, correct?
That is a common jurisdictional practice all across Canada. However, that is not located in the licensing bylaw right now.
Okay. So you're asking to defer to put that in the licensing bylaw. Is that what you're asking?
Yes, to defer it until we receive more information and we can get this occupancy situation and inspection situation sorted.
Okay. So that gives a little more understanding of what we're trying to do here, instead of saying this licensing bylaw we can't put it in place because we don't have all the blocks in place. Some of those blocks include inspection of facilities, checking out the boxes for fire and safety, life safety code, okay? Again, I know we have some operators sitting here in the gallery, but I want to clarify this because there appears to be a lot of misunderstanding out there what we're doing or what we're trying to do here. But I go back to the fact, and I'll keep repeating it, the bylaw was changed last year. unanimous vote, 8-0. So it was changed by council, the previous council. The other tools that follow after are just part of the implementation of the bylaw and the official plan that made changes last year. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Your Worship. Councillor McCabe, were you looking to make have a question or comment?
I just wanted to thank CAO Mohammed for clarification. That made much better sense, and I agree with his worship. I don't think we're going back to look at all the hard work that was done prior. I mean that we just want to make sure that we have the rest of our cogs and our wheels checked right before we rush them along. So thank you for all that clarification.
Okay, anybody else?
Yes, I would like to move a motion to defer. I think maybe we don't require it, correct me if I'm wrong, to defer the second reading of the STR license and bylaw this evening.
I would second that.
So, Chair, or CAO Mohammed, is that what you were looking for? Okay.
And just speaking to the resolution, can we provide a timeline? Because I got a timeline here from 2019 to 2023 on this issue. Can we provide a timeline when we will make the corrections? And are we deferring this until October 31st, Halloween, or will it be end of November? What's the wish of the manager, the CAO? What's your wish on deferral?
Go ahead, Mr. Forbes.
I would suggest that if we are going to defer, we should give ourselves a reasonable amount of time to resolve these issues. I will just sort of qualify that this issue, because it is a life safety concern, and where we are right now, it needs to decision makers need to be comfortable as to that this issue is being dealt with in a manner that is defendable, and that we can justify the type of inspection or whatever it is we do. So I would say that if deferring like a month is likely not enough time, but the reality is that there also may be resource implications out of this as well, because the more inspections, the more staff we need, but we can get that sorted. And what any municipality does is they usually look to their neighbors in regard to what kind of inspection regime were they requesting. In regard to the province doesn't inspect their buildings. They look at them to make sure that they're meeting certain levels of quality. They don't inspect them for safety. But if you do wish to defer, I would say end of October will give us plenty of time. It will also give you the opportunity, our legal department, to bring in those requirements for the summary proceedings bylaw to work in tandem with it. But we will be enforcing these regulations as of tomorrow in regard to the province won't issue a license for short-term rental unless they get a letter from us that it is in the right location. Thank you, Madam Chair.
So, Madam Chair, I'm going to put on the deferral until October 31st, 2023. That should be lots of time. And if I could also ask that we will have other parts of the toolbox, that the other tools that have to go into this STR toolbox, a summary offense, enhancement of our summary offense bylaw, that this also includes inspection services for the STR license and bylaw. And am I missing anything? Any other gifts that have to go under the Christmas tree?
Yeah. I would just clarify, Madam Chair. We will look at, again, how other communities, whether they're giving an occupancy permit, whether they have a checklist of certain requirements that need to be there, but we will bring those forward and give you a more comprehensive review of how other jurisdictions are handling this issue. So I don't want to commit that we will be doing certain things, but we'll certainly bring well in advance. The key thing is on this issue is that we should be, if using the timeline that you're alluding to, these discussions should be held well in advance of these timelines. So we will keep you informed. We'll do the due diligence in regard to how other communities are handling this. If we're going to suggest some changes, we'll bring them forward in regard to what we feel is the most appropriate way to handle, the concern over life safety.
But Mr. Forbes, I've asked, I know the chair has been at the meetings. We've talked about best practices in other jurisdictions. I always keep referring to Halifax for their summary offence ticketing system. All you have to do is go to halifax.ca and go to their summary offence ticketing system, and it lists what we can fine for, minimum, maximum fine. I know we have to change the Planning Act, but I think we have a cooperative or a collaborative provincial government that wants to work with us to make this happen. So hopefully between March 28th and October 31st, we can have all this tied up in a neat package as it relates to summary of the STR licensing bylaw and enhancing our summary offence bylaw. Thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. Forbes.
Look, I'm just following up. The mayor is correct in regard to the dealing with the summary proceedings bylaw, but I am told repeatedly there still is the tools in that existing summary proceedings bylaw to enforce this. They can enhance them as well, but the tools are there. So I just thought I would just clarify that. But it's always better to have better tools or more clear tools than ones that are more generic. So, but we will follow up on that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
So just to be clear, there's a motion on the floor to defer the licensing bylaw until October 31st based on staff's recommendation to council. Is that correct? Yeah?
Thank you, Madam Chair. That would be our recommendation to the committee, and then the committee would make that recommendation to council.
Anything else before you guys vote?
Question.
Okay, question called. Those in favor of staff's recommendation to put the licensing bylaw on deferred until October 30th, 31st, and all those in favor to move that on to council? Okay, in favor, okay. His worship and...
In favor.
In favor, okay. Okay. Introduction of new business. Do we have any other new business? Seeing none, somebody should bring Mr. Councillor back in for the final portion of the meeting in case he had any introduction of new business. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Yankop, I'm going to have to disconnect. So I will.
Okay, that's okay because we'll have Councillor back to do the, to vote for the adjournment.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for returning, Councillor back. We were just asking if anyone had any introduction of new business. None? Okay, thank you. Then I just need a motion to adjourn. Moved by His Worship, seconded by Councillor Beck. Okay. Adjourn.
Turn them off.